Thank you again for joining us on the Family Law Show. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Lani Barron and Jeanann Khalife. Lani is an attorney, mediator, and the owner of Alternative Divorce Solutions, a practice dedicated to helping couples find a more dignified and peaceful alternative to traditional divorce. Lani graduated in the top 4% of her class at Whittier Law School and is also the founder of the ADS Institute for Best Practices in Divorce Mediation. She is an expert in family law, alternative dispute resolution, mediated divorce, negotiation, and many other areas. Jeanann is an attorney, mediator, and the managing partner at ADS. And following a successful career in business and employment law, she became a partner at ADS in 2015. She's been a guest on the Inclusive Education Project podcast and mentors aspiring attorneys and manages all 3 ADS locations. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Did I pretty much cover everything there in a nutshell, or?
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
You two have been friends for a very long time and went to law school, right?
Yeah.
Together, went to law school together, that is.
Yeah. We met the first day of orientation, and Lani was the one that was courageous enough to approach me. So,
yeah. So we both attended Whittier Law School. And during orientation, the first day, the school had all of these picnic benches set up. And I remember standing at the beginning of the sidewalk, looking out at all the picnic benches, and everybody just looked completely horrified. And Jeanann was the only person who was smiling and looked really friendly. So I decided that she was the right person to go sit next to. And I really had no idea that we would build a lifelong friendship, a business, that we would literally be family.
yeah.
So we feel really lucky to have met that day and had this journey together, which has been a wild ride.
For sure. And I kind of remember that after orientation, we got our sections, and I was really sad that Lani wasn't in my section because they divide us into 3 different sections. And I actually tried to convince her to move into my section, but it still worked out. I mean, 10, 11 years later, we're still talking, we're still thriving. We've developed a sisterhood, and it's great.
So tell me a little bit about kind of the differences or the nuances, rather, of mediation and how you do what you do, because I think it's definitely a little bit different than your standard issue in the box, family law or divorce firm.
Yeah. So the one thing is that the first thing that I want to premise it with is that not only are we different from a litigation point of view, but we're also different from a mediation perspective as well, because we have tailored the mediation process for family law. But Lani, if you want to give a little bit more background about it, or if you want me to continue, it's fine. You tell me.
Well, I mean, the one thing that I want to say that really sets mediation apart from litigation is the process itself. And so the parties are coming to the table with the intention to settle out of court, and not to be confused with the misconception that they've already pre-agreed on all of the legal issues pertaining to their divorce. Yeah. And there are several parallel universes in which Jeanann and I work in mediation. So one of those is the paradigm of California law, which becomes the backdrop for the divorce procedurally, because we do file all of the paperwork, but can also become part of the mediation process as the conversation that we have with the parties. A court would likely do this. California law says this. There's also what the parties come to the table feeling is fair from a subjective standpoint, which can differ many times from what California law says. And I do like to tell our clients that California law is just a marker of what is fair. If it were the marker, then the law would be the same in every single state, right? So there's that. And then there's sometimes outlying considerations or goals that the parties come to the table with that they want to solve for or they want to gear their settlement towards. So for example, we're working with a couple right now, and one spouse wants to buy the family home for the other because they want to ultimately leave the house to their kids. So that's a consideration we can plan for in mediation, that a judge would not really have the time or resources to be able to deal with on the litigation level. So we're able to really customize the results for our clients based on what they feel is fair and what they also feel is important to them. And I think that that's really important. And I think it brings a level of humanity to the divorce process that does not otherwise exist in litigation.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, not only do we tailor for such aspects as, say, somebody wanting to buy out the house to keep it for the family, but we also take into cultural and religious and moral concerns that the parties do have, that they want to abide by, that they want to put at the forefront of their case or their matter. Whereas, if you were litigating, the law is the law. And that's what the basis is of any type of litigated case, is what is the standard in the law and how do we apply it to this case, where we take a step further and say, okay, we understand these are the issues that are important to you, that the considerations you want to implement in your divorce or your legal separation. How do we combine that with what your subjective views are and then what the law is, to give it a holistic approach so that the clients walk away feeling that they've been heard and that they've addressed and explored every aspect of their divorce?
And I love how you said that, this idea of like a holistic approach. And that I'm curious, because this didn't just come about one day when you first started law. Did you see this when you first started out in your careers as something that was really kind of a need that existed, and that's what brought you to this more, I would say, amicable, I think, compassionate approach to getting a divorce, or even
100%.
in general?
Yeah, I mean, what inspired this journey for me to begin with is my parents' divorce, which started when I was the age of 14 and didn't wrap up until I was about 19. And through that, I was, a minor child, really didn't have a say in the process whatsoever. And it was a very disempowering experience for me, both during the divorce itself and for years to come, as our family tried to deal with the lasting impact of the contention that occurred during the divorce process. And so I knew that I did not want that for families as a starting off point. And so when I started college, I actually started a paralegal program and went to work for a family law firm. And as chance had it, the attorney that I worked for also did mediations and conducted them in her office. So there I was really able to see the parallel, where these litigated cases were ongoing, they were contentious, they were extremely expensive, whereas the mediation cases would oftentimes settle in an hour, a day, maybe one or two sessions, and the parties were really left in a completely different position. So that's really where I was introduced to the concept of mediation and began to explore it in my own career. And I do still to this day believe that it is a critical need for families to have a humane approach to going through something that would otherwise be completely devastating, not just for them, but for their children and even their extended family members. So, I think it is one of the most important lines of work that Jeanann and I can be involved with, although we did find different pathways to this line of work. I think, we have the ability every day to see the long-term impact of, how we help our clients and what we do for them.
Yeah. So my approach and how I came into mediation was completely different than Lani's. I have an undergrad in economics, and I was really interested in business litigation, employment law, all these aspects of what you call corporate and financial law. So I actually have a concentration in that, and I embarked on my journey in that career. And as I started to practice more in the employment realm, I started to have this negative feeling inside me, like my moral compass was not on point and on tune. And it just happened to be that Lani had a couple who didn't speak English primarily, that spoke Arabic better than English, and I'm fluent in the language. And so I came in as an assist to translate and to help her in the case, because that's what friends do. And it turned to be the point where I decided that this was the right thing for me. I'm actually providing a positive experience for my clients and turning something that is naturally destructive into somewhat positive and constructive for a couple or a family. And like Lani said, divorce is one of those things where it touches every aspect of an individual's life. And it literally impacts and changes everything. And if you approach it in a non-productive manner, which is what a litigation attorney is trained to do, you could have a lasting negative impact on that family and on that couple. And Lani, from her own personal experience, has just, attest to that. But for us, I just have a couple right now that I just found out their daughter is in chemo and she's a toddler. And if it wasn't for the mediation process going so smoothly, I mean, imagine all the court fees, the court dates, the in and out of custody arrangements. The focus shifts to that versus shifting on their daughter's treatment and being there for her. So it just attests to what it is.
Now, would you say that, I mean, that's got to be probably one of the most rewarding experiences. I'd say that you're coming at this from an angle where it's more, how can I take a very broken situation and make everyone feel whole and complete, but also adult, and come out of this with kind of a positive mindset? I mean, that has to feel infinitely more rewarding than anything else you could possibly approach, I feel.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. And it's not to say it's easy. It's definitely not easy, because we are taking into consideration people's emotions, their personal value systems, what they subjectively believe that is fair, and how do we balance that against what the law says. So it is very challenging, but very rewarding at the end of the day. And Lani likes to say, and Lani, you could, correct me, but it's kind of like you have the sugar and then the spice. You have to balance that between your clients to make sure that you have a good outcome for them.
Right, which means, more practically, you have to be kind, but you also need to know when to step in to create boundaries between the parties in their communication that they may not otherwise have had or had the ability or skills to develop in communicating on their own. So we see a lot of clients that only communicate regarding the issues of their divorce inside our office. They do not talk about finances outside of the room. They don't talk about their parenting plan outside of mediation, because we're really there to referee the conversation and act as an intermediator or intermediary. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just basically enter the conversation to say, what I'm hearing from you is this, even if the way that the client frames what they say is very negative. So we're needing to extrapolate from what they say, no matter how they frame it, what they actually mean, like what the underlying premise of what they're trying to say is, and then communicate it to the other party, then get the other person's understanding and feelings about what they say and try to align those two into an agreement. So it can be very abstract, intricate work. And it's really interesting because sometimes what somebody says is not what they mean. And you have to be able to differentiate between the two to help them communicate in a respectful, productive way.
Yeah, and in a very efficient way, because, things the energy could completely shift if it's misconstrued by the other person. So like Lani said, it's very challenging, but it's a delicate process that we have. And this is why I premised it with, we do mediation differently and we've tailored it for divorce, because mediation in a divorce setting does not lend itself to one type of mediation, a philosophy, or it's a combination of all of them. And as a mediator, you have to be skilled enough to know when to use what type of mediation and what type of couple lends itself primarily to one versus the other. And so it's a delicate dance that you have to have between the couple and yourself and your intellect all at the same time.
Now, do you feel that kind of maintaining that philosophy was it a bit harder to do during, COVID-19, the global pandemic? Has it been like working a little overtime to maintain that bond, or did things just kind of shift into a different mode where you're like, look, I just have to do it this way now and we'll be fine?
Well, we were fortunate in the sense that Jeanann and I had experience in conducting Zoom mediations. So we have had clients in the past where one or both spouses have either relocated out of state or out of the country. So we were familiarized in terms of what it means to conduct a virtual mediation. It was very strange, to say the least, because in March, and I can't remember the exact day of the first shutdown, but we were business as usual one day, literally in the office all together, having lunch as a team like we normally do. And then the next day, I literally came in and Jeanann was basically in a hazmat suit, throwing files into a plastic bag and like running out the door.
It was like shutting down all the laptops. I was like, you take this, you take that.
It was not a gradual transition to moving into the shutdown. Okay, I will say that from the outset. It was very abrupt. And we really did not know what to expect at all. We had no expectation whatsoever of whether we would ever get people to call us again, whether we would have clients that would feel comfortable conducting the whole mediation start to finish on Zoom, what that would look like in terms of our team, and that we would, for the first time, be compartmentalized into different spaces because we were all working from home. During that same time, our legal assistant got COVID. And so she had to quarantine. Jeanann and I were doing the work of ourselves and our legal assistant while she was recovering, while trying to hire a replacement for her at the same time because she was about to start law school. So there was a lot going on and we adapted. And so, the place that we ultimately arrived at was when things reopened, we took a gradual approach back from virtual to slowly reintegrating into for lack of a better word, normal life. So now on some days, our team is reintegrated back into the physical office location. The way that we have our space set up is that we're each in a different physical space of the office. So we have our legal assistant in the front. We have myself and Jeanann sharing the conference room as our primary office, and we have our associate attorney in the other office. And we're very careful in terms of masks, hand washing, all of that. We are seeing some clients in person right now on a limited basis, but when we do so, we disinfect the conference room, we wipe down all of the pens, everybody is required to wear a mask, we have air filters running, so we do have protocols in place. I would not say it's necessarily been an easy transition for us, as I'm sure it hasn't for many businesses. However, we're extremely grateful that we had built that culture with our staff and team beforehand, because we had that strong, unbreakable bond that I feel got us through this crisis relatively uneventful in relation to what I've heard other businesses have gone through. So that's my 2 cents on that. What do you think, Jeanann?
Oh, you captured it very well. I mean, I think the most eventful part is every time you saw me with like hazmated down, spraying everything with Lysol, in and out of the office, and then my obsession with getting sensor-free, touch-free sanitizer dispensers and all that. So, yeah, I mean, Lani and I think one of the things that we were blessed with is that we like technology, even though it doesn't like us, but we always think a few steps ahead, how can we become more advanced as a firm? And so, when this whole thing happened, we already had transitioned the whole firm into a cloud-based system and laptops. So the transition from a technical point of view from that was very easy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was done. It was very easy. And so, yeah, Lani, you captured it pretty well.
To shift gears a little bit, but I think one thing I'm curious about as well, in terms of the actual, the workflow, client advertising, was your reputation and, who you are within the industry, did that help you a great deal? Or did your advertising have to change a little bit? Did you have to kind of put the foot on the gas a bit more, or just kind of stay the course with your advertising to ensure that you still had a good amount of cases and clients coming in during the start of this?
So the first thing that we did was had a conversation with Alex, who is our marketing manager at Scorpion. And I said, what trends are you starting to see in terms of search volume, where people are looking, what's going on? And she was able to advise us in real time regarding what was going on in the market. There was a point where we shifted some of our advertising dollars toward Facebook versus Google, which Google was traditionally the highest performing, obviously, campaign for us, but that was effective. So we actually did not see any decrease in inbound calls or clients. And yes, I don't want to jinx it because we've been very consistent, thanks to you guys, in terms of our new clients. So thankfully, Alex was really instrumental in just helping us stay on top of that, staying in contact with us, making sure our website was updated to indicate that we were doing virtual consultations and mediations. We did have court closures at a certain point, and that was certainly a challenge internally, and we had to hold a lot of court filings for several months. So the courts were actually closed from mid-March all the way until June. So that did change our workflow a bit. But from the marketing side and in terms of inbound calls, I think our reputation, our online reputation, as well as our reputation in the community did serve us very well.
Mm-hmm. I agree, 100%.
And if I may suggest one last thing before we go, even just coaching people on, mediation and what you do for a living, I think you should create a whole new seminar on building a good friendship and business partnership together, because I think you probably could teach a lot of people about that as well, especially with, the dynamic of friendship, how, you both excel in different things. Honestly, that right there, I think could be something that would help out a lot of people in terms of, building a good partnership.
Let's get cracking.
Well, thank you so very much for joining me today on the Family Law Show today. Once again, Jeanann, Lani, Alternative Divorce Solutions, ADS, also look up ADSU. And if you've enjoyed our show today, make sure to hit subscribe, and also look up Alternative Divorce Solutions for more information about their firm. And I can't thank you both enough. Once again, great information. I've learned so much from both of you today, and hopefully we can have you back on the show again another time.
We would love that. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.